In less than 4 months, it'll be the 3-year anniversary since we last saw the greatest light heavyweight of all time fight inside the octagon. Jon has since relinquished his belt and has been planning a move to heavyweight, but it hasn't come to fruition. But it seems like the GOA team might be pretty close to getting a deal done and fighting for the heavyweight throne. We'll be looking into that and more in today's video. First up, Ngannou's team has been in touch with the UFC. The head coach of Team Xtreme Couture, Eric Nicksick, did an interview with MMA Junkie in which he revealed that the UFC has been in touch with them and they wanted to know who Francis wants to defend his title against next. For some of you, it may be news that Francis has agreed to stay with the UFC, and we'll have to talk about that in detail. But for now, it seems like Team Ngannou was on board with welcoming Jon Jones to heavyweight. Eric told the UFC executive who contacted him that ideally they would like to return in March, and the best opponent would be Jones. And for that, they need to figure out how long Francis needs to recover from his injury. Ngannou had a full ACL tear, and still, he fought Cyril Gane in that condition. After the fight, he went through surgery, but we don't know how far along he is in the healing process. Francis's coach said that the executive told him that the UFC was completely on board with the idea of Jones and Ngannou fighting because that could do gigantic numbers. And then Eric told MMA Junkie that right now, Francis can move along and hit pads with him, and that was basically all they could do during the last few weeks of preparing for Gane. So the ideal timeline, according to some, would be the first quarter, but that's only if everything goes according to plan. Up next, how are the contract disputes going with Jon? This might prove to be the most important factor when it comes to making a fight between these two athletes. Both Jones and Ngannou have had some serious issues while negotiating for their fights, and most of them were related to how much they were getting paid, since they both think that they haven't been treated fairly. Another thing in common is the fact that they both made their issues public, and historically speaking, that hasn't always been the best idea to deal with the UFC. Dana can be really stubborn about not letting anyone make him do anything. He wants to make an example. Around the time when Jones started his negotiations after vacating the belt, Jorge Masvidal, who used to be under the same management, had similar issues. Masvidal ended up getting 2 title shots by being at the right place at the right time, but Jones didn't have the same luck. Jon initially said that he wants more than $8 to $10 million for a mega fight with Ngannou. White said he was asking for Wilder's paycheck. It was clear that Jones wasn't convincing Dana to guarantee that check. After Francis got the belt, it was clear that Jones was next, but he tweeted to show him the money, which meant he still wasn't satisfied. Jon soon changed his management, and since then, there hasn't been a lot of news, and Jon has just been working out and getting bigger than ever. It's actually been him calling out Stipe and looking for a fight by the end of the year. Next up, will Francis be staying? As we mentioned earlier, Jon isn't the only one who had trouble getting a good deal. The heavyweight champion of the world revealed that he was in debt during his training camps, and a guy like him should be getting paid a lot more. The UFC made an interim title fight just 3 months after he won the belt because he wasn't willing to face Derek Lewis on their timeline. Lewis lost to Gane, who was undefeated back then and was favored to beat Ngannou. It looked like the UFC wanted nothing more than for Francis to lose his title. The champ had already revealed that he had 1 fight left on his contract, and after that, he was done. So the best bet for the UFC was for Gane to win, and they could kiss Francis goodbye. During the fight week, Francis revealed he was sued by the UFC for talking to another promoter. The baddest man on the planet was paid $600K to show, and $600K to win for defending his title. The UFC tried getting him into another contract, but it wasn't about the money anymore. Ngannou wanted to box, and he wanted it to be in his contract that he'd be allowed to do that. After December, Ngannou would be free to compete wherever he wants. A Tyson-Fury matchup seems like the most interesting option. Francis thought that he'd maybe take 1 or 2 boxing matches, but he wants to be an MMA fighter in the long term. Up next, we'll look at the rumors of a potential fight with Stipe, the greatest light heavyweight of all time versus the greatest heavyweight of all time. Johnny Bones taking on Stipe Miocic. Now that's a fight you don't even need to sell, but if you do it the right way, it could break all the records. There have been rumors going around that the two of them are going to fight in December at UFC 282. Jiri will defend his title against Glover, but they still haven't made that fight the main event because the UFC hopes to make the Stipe Jones fight on that card, perhaps for the interim title. Francis's head coach said that they don't want Jon to be fighting anyone at heavyweight before getting a title shot because there's a chance that he might lose and they wouldn't be able to get the fight money. And if Jon does fight before then, he might win a decision, and he'd have experience as heavyweight and come back better. Jones is a guy who fixes a lot of his mistakes, and as he gets more reps, 100% he just gets better. There's also a concern about him not being used to all the weight, ever since he added a lot more muscle mass. But who knows if he'll be able to move and kick like he used to. At this point, we wouldn't take those rumors too seriously, as it might be the 5th time it has been rumored that Jon would fight Stipe. If a Francis fight is on the table for March, then that's what's likely going to happen. Following up, let's look at Mokaev's big win at UFC 280. There aren't many young prospects that have more potential than Muhammad Mokaev. The 22-year-old was the biggest favorite on the entire card, with some of the betting lines having him a 12-1 favorite. Everyone was looking forward to watching this kid perform, except maybe Daniel Cormier, who forgot his name. Mokaev's performance was just as everyone expected. The undefeated prospect outstruck his opponent by 3 times and landed 90% of all the strikes he threw. That's an insane number. This alone should tell you how good this guy is, but that's not it. He ended up submitting his opponent in the 3rd round, and it looked like Mokaev was looking for a reverse triangle, and he locked in an armbar from an awkward position. Gordon, who's a BJJ black belt, is known for his armbars, so Mokaev wanted to beat him at his own game. Later in the interviews, Muhammad said that he didn't care about his opponent's black belt. Everyone told him that, but he believes he's also a black belt in his own heart for everything he's overcome. Finally, can he break Jon Jones' record? From Raul Rosas to Muhammad Mokaev, looks like everyone wants to break the record of becoming the youngest champion in UFC history. The Englishman is just 22 years old, so he doesn't have many years left, but he's ready for any top contender that the UFC could offer him. The next opponent that made sense for him was Brandon Royval. He said that he's not on his level, just like Albazi isn't on his level. Mokaev isn't a big believer in Royval's height. He said that if people think he's really good, they should watch his fights before he comes into the UFC. Muhammad made a similar statement to a fellow Russian-born UFC legend, Khabib Nurmagomedov. He was confident that if he got a good rest and fought again in March, he could take out both Royval and Albazi on the same night. It's obvious that Mokaev is now looking for someone who's ranked higher than him. He doesn't want the Sean O'Malley route, and the guy just wants to be thrown into the Shark Tank so he could prove he belongs there. With all the hype behind him, it wouldn't be the biggest surprise if his next 2 or 3 fights get him to a title shot. With the right matchups, it's very possible. Mokaev said he's ready to fight again in December. Let's see if he can keep building this win streak and break that record. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think we'll see Jon Jones finally inside the octagon again in March? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.